is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and wide. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine.
Hi, this is Marjohn Love, and this is Marjohn's Musings. And today's show is Trajectories. A trajectory is a line of motion through time. Today is December 17th, 2018. And I haven't read you anything from Daily Word in quite a while. But today's message was one that I thought was really appropriate to the season. Prosperity. I have more than enough. During this busy time of year, I may focus on not having enough because I want to share with friends and family. The most important thing I can remember is that there is always enough. I follow my inner wisdom to the good I seek. I speak positive words of faith and truth. I let go of any fear that I will not have enough, giving thanks that Spirit is infinite and unlimited. I joyously open to rich ideas and inspiring ways to use them to increase my supply. I give without hesitation, in the faith that all that I have and all that I give multiplies and returns to me in abundance. I am open to my good in whatever form it takes or channel it flows to me. And the Bible quote they did for today is Chronicles 31:10. We have had enough to eat and have plenty to spare, for the Lord has blessed his people. I didn't always feel blessed at Christmas. I can remember feeling desperate and sad and lonely and unloved and abandoned. My mom was killed 50 years ago tomorrow. And as a 16-year-old, I found that devastating. It left me homeless. And my gym coach, Pat McMahon, who I've talked to you about before, was the person that I would run to with tears and fears and teenage frustrations and confusions. And I went to Pat and she said, listen, I'm going to help you figure something out. You just hang tough this weekend and you come see me the first thing Monday morning. And what she did is she went home and asked her husband, Bill, if he would be willing to open their home to a stranger. And so 50 years ago tomorrow, Bill McMahon opened his home to me. And I think without Pat and Bill, I never would have finished high school. I had a little job at the Pennsauken Mart in Pennsauken, New Jersey. And and I might be working there still, you know. Thanksgiving morning, I called Pat and Bill to wish them a happy Thanksgiving. I typically call on Mother's Day, Father's Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter. And I called up, and Pat was happier than I've heard her in a couple of years. Her daughter, Kathy, was there, and her daughter, Anna, was there. And I told Pat that I had gone to Cake Ann, and Inga had made me a key lime pie, and I was going to bring that key lime pie to my friends Lori and Rick because they had invited us to their house for Thanksgiving. And she was bubbling and joyous, telling me how she and Kathy and Anna were baking key lime tarts to bring to Thanksgiving dinner. And then she got serious. And she said, "Marjohn, sit down, I have something to tell you. Bill has died." I sat there stunned. I didn't know quite what to say, so I listened really carefully. She told me, "We had him cremated. He's here with me in the apartment." My father, by biology, was cremated, and I have a little urn of his ashes on my Buddhist altar at home. But Pat and Bill were Roman Catholic, and I always thought that they would be buried like my own mother, like my birth mother. Pat said, "Yeah, he's here with me in the apartment," and started giggling. I don't think I ever heard Pat giggling unless there was something really funny going on. I thought, oh my goodness, she's like a little hysterical here, and sure enough, she started to cry. Told me how awful it had been, and that she had called me, but that then all the funeral preparations got going and she got overwhelmed, and she was sorry she hadn't called back. It left me in a strange space, because the day before, Kevin and I had been at dress rehearsal for the Cape Ann Symphony Holiday Pops concert, and then we were going out to be with company, and then the following day was another dress rehearsal, and then there were 3 concerts within 36 hours, and I was so busy and shocky that I didn't have the time to process my loss. I was a little hurt, a little angry to be told on Thanksgiving this really sad news that someone who had written and called and visited for 50 years was now gone. And my friend Naomi told me that when her brother died of a brain tumor after 2 major neurosurgeries and chemotherapy and radiation, her poor sister-in-law lost not only her husband and partner of decades, but she lost her role as caregiver. and that she was a basket case, and other people had to set up the memorial service because she couldn't do it. She was a wreck. That's a quote. She was a wreck. She said, "I don't think Pat told you on Thanksgiving to hurt you in any way. I think she told you on Thanksgiving because that is when you called her. And there you were on the phone, and she couldn't let you hang up without telling you." So I chewed on that for a while. The following Sunday, after the Cape Ann Symphony performances, I was at church singing with my friend Jillian, and we do an interesting thing because of ecumenicism, where all different forms of Christianity are communicating with one another and befriending one another, because as our culture becomes more secular, fewer and fewer people are going to church of any kind. I know that my dear friends Nancy and Victor are Baptist, and that the Baptist minister is a hot ticket. I really like him. And that our minister, Reverend Derek Van Goulden, and Matt Wheaton get together and they do services together, sunrise services at Easter and stuff. So anyway, at our church, our choir director, Dr. Phil Swanson, who's playing lead trombone in the Revels down at Harvard this year, he had us do a taizé, which is a French Roman Catholic form of prayer from the Middle Ages. It's a chant, and the one that we're doing is, "O Lord, hear my prayer. O Lord, hear my prayer. Come and listen to me." Well, I went to sing this, and you repeat it. We usually do it 3 times. And I realized that when I was 16 and a motherless child, I wasn't thankful to anyone for anything for quite a long time. I was furious and angry. We buried my mother on the 23rd of December, and she was only 45 years old. Her death haunted me for decades, and every Christmas time I would have a blue Christmas. You know, Elvis Presley had nothing on me. But singing "O Lord, hear my prayer" in church, I realized that when I was too hurt and too angry to pray, God heard me, and He gave me Bill, who opened his home and took in a very troubled teenager. I have vignettes, little jewels of memory. I'd been living there about 6 or 7 months, and Bill sat me down on the couch and said, "Marjohn, I need to tell you something. I tried to adopt you, and your father wouldn't let me," which is so typical. My dad didn't want to pay child support. He had to be taken to court, 7 different times to pay $25 a week so that the people taking care of me would have money for my food and my clothing. But it was a wake-up call to my dad, because Bill is one of these kind of quiet guys that does the absolute best he can. He told my dad, if you don't let me adopt her, you need to man up and be her dad, or I'm going to take you to court for child support. So my dad, at the next visit, I saw him like 3-4 hours once a month. And when I was little, he fought for that. He wanted to see me. He wanted to make sure I was all right. My dad wasn't the villain. My dad's father was an alcoholic. Walked out and left my dad and his sister and their mom. I think my dad did the best he could with what he had. He didn't have a good relationship with his own dad. And his stepfather used to beat him with a strap, to the point that he ran away from home at 15. Lied about his age and joined the National Guard, and then later went into the Seabees. He was in World War II. My Kevin's auntie was in World War II. She flew a mail plane in the States, delivering mail in the days of snail mail. But she was a lady pilot. There's a woman, Harkness Love, who's a lady pilot. I remember as a girl I was taught all these restrictions about girls. I was thinking about, making lace. I had talked to you about this scarf that I went to New York to learn how to make. And the pattern from Anique. And I think I did a pretty good job with it. I made a short one because I wanted to make an eternity scarf, the kind that you pop over your head. And I was driving myself crazy about how should I show you the pattern. I was going to mount it on black velvet, but it's pink and yellow and green and peach, and it's a spring thing. It wasn't something to be mounted on black velvet. And then I realized Anique put the pattern on black. I got my bigger bobbins. I'm going to make another one of those scarves. It took weeks. It's kind of weird, like, why would somebody resurrect an occupation where people took 2 years to make a wedding veil that somebody wore once and folded up and put in a chest, or a christening gown that a baby wore once? But I think the purchasers of lace understood all the time and effort that went into the making of the lace. I was at the Second Glance's Christmas vintage sale. I got some beautiful, beautiful pieces. And I was saddened by the fact that they were intended for use as placemats. I don't know about you, but now that I'm in my 60s, I don't think I can get through a meal without dripping something on the placemat or my clothes or down my chin. And understanding that I'm now a senior and that a whole lot of my generation are seniors, and that very few of us make it through our 60s into our 70s without losing our parents. And that I'm probably not the only one who's a little sad this Christmas. This manger that you see, I got at the glance. I was not feeling like Mrs. Claus. I didn't have much ho, ho, ho in me. After all the hustle and bustle of the concerts, with the Cape Ann Symphony, suddenly things got quiet. And the grief that I had held at bay came back. But there was no funeral for me. There was no flowers. My dear friend Patricia's husband and his new wife hugged me and sent me a sympathy card. But basically, I was kind of left to work things out on my own. I think there are a lot of people who suffer at this time of year. My Bill was a kind of quiet hero. I know in the Boston area, there were racial tensions between Roxbury and Southie. Same was true down in Philadelphia, but even though Bill was Scots-Irish and Catholic, he would get up in the morning 5 days a week and drive to West Philly, where he taught physical education and coached basketball. And he sent some of his most talented players to the Harlem Globetrotters, because in those days, black people were not accepted into the NBA. Well, the Harlem Globetrotters got a big following, and over time it became more and more integrated because they did trick shots and stunts and they knew how to play ball. And my Bill was responsible for helping, I think it was 17 different players over the years, to go down to Harlem and wow the crowds. And they started making money. And basketball team owners who weren't making money kind of got the idea that the skills of a player, their talent, their dedication, their ability to play the game was more important than the color of their skin. It was a trajectory. It took time. Anyway, when I went to the second glance, it was kind of like hound dog Christmas, you know? This shadow box was for sale. Someone had bought it for someone as a craft idea, or they'd bought it for themselves, and it was still shrink wrapped. I picked it up for $4 and I took it home. It was sort of like coloring in a coloring book. Now, why would somebody who's an artist color in a coloring book? Well, there's a fancy Freudian term. It's called regression in service of the ego. All that means is when you're really distressed, sometimes it helps to do something simple that you enjoyed when you were a child. So I got out my acrylic paints, thanks to Elizabeth Hardy. She got us working in acrylic, so I got out my acrylic paints and I painted up the nativity scene, because the little casting that said Christmas and had the Holy Family in the sea for my angel fell down and broke. I was upset. And it wasn't something expensive. It wasn't something precious. Except that when Kevin and I were in Virginia at Fort Monroe on the Army base, that was my nativity scene that Christmas. I got it with my friend Carol. We went shopping and I saw it, and it was just this casting, but it was pretty. It was painted gold, and it fit on the little mantelpiece in the apartment. Those apartments were so old that they used to heat them with fireplaces. By the time we moved in, they had put in gas plumbing, and you only used the fireplace as a focal point. But it was kind of weird. You light blue gas and you look at it burbling along, and you might as well be looking in a gas broiler in your oven. It wasn't very, it wasn't very authentic. I get begging letters at this time of year. I have a recycle bin. Do you have one of those recycle bins? I filled a recycle bin with begging letters. Everybody wants money at this time of year. And a lot of the causes are really good. When I found Bill's obituary online, Pat had put in lieu of flowers, please send any gifts to the Alzheimer's Association. Because Bill got dementia. My own Marie Blanche that lived with me for her last 22 months when we were in Nebraska, she got dementia. She had been this vibrant actress and bon vivant a bit, She played Cosette in Victor Hugo's Les Miserables, and that launched her on a career from the stage to the movies, and then she was D'Artagnan's girlfriend in 6 Three Musketeers movies. By the time I met her, she was living in a little cottage overlooking the ocean. And she and Romulo came to live with us their last time on the planet. And dementia is a hard thing. A lot of elders get what's called sundowner syndrome. They get agitated around 3:30 to 4 to 5 to 6, and as the sun is setting, they get more and more distressed and upset, and they're like a hyperactive child, and no matter what you do, it's really difficult to calm them down. It made me sad to think of Pat trying to cope with Bill. Kevin and I drove there to visit them, and Pat took Bill out of the assisted living facility, made sure he was showered up and dressed sharp and shaved and haircut and all that. And we went out to IHOP and we had breakfast. It was lovely to be with them, but I did not realize that as his condition deteriorated, she wanted to protect him from the scrutiny of people, and she wanted to protect the people who loved him from tarnishing the memory of the wonderful man that he was, bright and witty with a droll sense of humor. So that breakfast at IHOP was the last time I got to see him. I never got to tell him how much I loved him or how he changed the trajectory of my entire life. When I told my birth father that I wanted to go to college, he told me, "I'm not paying for your MRS, which is Mrs." There was a thing there for a little while when women were admitted into colleges that the family would send the girl for 1 or 2 years, and her mission was to find herself a husband. I wanted to become an engineer like my dad. My dad worked for NASA. He was brilliant. But he was the kind of guy that needed a pocket protector. You know, the slide rule guy that really doesn't have too much in the way of social skills. It's odd. I think you learn things as you get older. You see things differently. Your perspectives change. I was thinking about the daily word and the thing about gifts and giving. Have you ever found the perfect present? I went to Macy's one year and I found this gold ring with 10 small oval emeralds and 6 tiny diamonds, and it was 60% off sale and a 20% coupon for family and friends who shop at Macy's a lot. And my dear friend had smacked her hand against something and broken her emerald ring, and I bought this little ring for her. I couldn't wait till Christmas. And I gave her the ring, and she opened the box, and her face fell, and she looked startled, almost frightened. And she said, "I can't accept this." So I took the ring home. I think sometimes it's not about how much you spend or... 14 karat gold and diamonds. Hello, I did the absolute best I could. She topped me last night. She took my husband and I and her husband out to a concert from the Woburn Historical Society, and we saw people doing country dances and singing, and then we went to Mario's and we had this wonderful vegetarian Italian dinner. And she and Victor told my husband and I that we were their best friends and that they loved us. And they both got tearful. For me, that was a great gift. I think the gift of being loved is the second best gift in the world. There was this psychologist, he used to lecture. He used to be a fundraiser for PBS down in Boston. His name was Leo Buscaglia. And he said when a 2-year-old loses their teddy bear, they don't cry for the loss of the love the inanimate object gave them. They cry for the loss of the object that they loved, that they showered love on. I think that's a big part of grieving. Because although Bill loved me enough that when my father would not support me to go to college, he put a second mortgage on his house to insure my student loans. And when my stepmother handed my first serious boyfriend a $20 bill and told him to elope with me because they were not going to give me a wedding, And the boy broke up with me because his mother told him, "Your father and I came from Italy alone. If anything happened to us, they'd be your in-laws, and they're not going to be good in-laws." And Teresa was right. They would have been lousy in-laws. I mean, my father wouldn't even come stay with me when my baby was born, even though I offered to pay his plane fare and put him up. He wouldn't come. My husband almost lost his job because the baby and I were having problems. And in those days, there was no paternity leave. He used up all his vacation and all his sick time and took a couple of days off besides. And thank God the baby and I are both fine. My baby is now 36 years old. But the big box that came to my house with baby clothes and baby things came from Pat and Bill. And when I got married to my Kevin and I told Pat what had happened with Tony, Pat said, "Don't you worry. You come here. We'll give you your reception." And they did. And so this basically homeless kid got to meet her new in-laws in a beautiful home with wonderful food. I walked into the kitchen and Pat was crying to Bill because there was a 2-layer cake. And I stopped and they didn't know I was there. And she goes, "But I only asked them for one thing. I asked them to buy the cake." And she ripped the dollar store plastic people off and showed it to him and said, "Look at this." Pat wasn't crying because they didn't shoulder their fair share of the reception. She was crying for me, that they didn't even love me enough to give me a pretty wedding cake with a nice memento husband and wife statue. But you know what? I was at the second glance and I saw a crystal one. I brought it home and I stuck it on a base that has like colored lights underneath, and I have Mr. and Mrs. at my house as a memento of my wedding, where people who didn't need to love me did. And there are 2 people at my church who I don't know really well. But I had a young friend, used to be in the youth group, and she and I hit it off, and I didn't realize how much trouble she was in. You've heard on the news about the opioid crisis. Her family had opioid crisis, and this couple, even though they had 2 children, took this young woman into their home and helped her go to college. Right now, this girl is in college right now because they loved her the way Pat and Bill loved me 50 years ago. Sometimes, you can agonize over gifts. I found this pretty dichroic glass, and I knew exactly who I was going to give it to. Then I got it home and I realized I've never seen this dainty petite lady wear anything anywhere near this big. I got this charm about the love of the Holy Spirit. I put it together and I think I'm going to wear it. The emerald ring taught me a lesson. if you're going to give a gift, give something small, something simple. It doesn't need to be extravagant. And if the person you're giving the gift to is like my half-sister, who looked at something I gave her once and said, "Where did you get this?" and threw it into the back of my car. Maybe you shouldn't be wasting money on that person anyway. Like, if it's about the thing, maybe that person doesn't deserve the thing. Kevin tried to give me a really wonderful Christmas this year. He drove me all the way down to the Boston Museum of Fine Arts to go see the Christopher Robin exhibit. And we're kind of old-fashioned. I didn't realize how important it was. All the tweets and texts and, cell phones everywhere. We didn't text ahead and make a reservation to see Christopher Robin. So when we got down there with our friends, it was full for the day and we couldn't get in. We were there at opening. Hello, we're here, it's opening, and there's no places for members to get into this special exhibit because everybody texted in their reservations. So we made our reservation already for New Year's Eve. We know where we're going. We have our reservation. We went to the Makers Festival, and it was kind of interesting. The whole town of Rockport got all excited about, doing this whole Christmas thing. And I was touched and pleased that the Brackett's, who have the Brackett's Ocean View restaurant, that they took apart their entire dining room for their restaurant and set up these little areas for people who are handicraft people. Like, there was nobody there that made lace. Maybe if I get good enough at this next year, I'll do it. And I'll sell some lace, see if it sells. I don't know if I will. Because lace takes so much work. I don't know that I'd be willing to sell it for money. Like, maybe I'd only give it to somebody that I cared about. But the Brackett's are also hosting Rockport Poetry. They do the festival where the Navy ships come in and pancake breakfasts and fundraisers and stuff. There's heroes right here, right now. And a lot of them are like my Bill, who went into the ghetto all by himself, white guy, going in the ghetto to try to help black kids come out of the ghetto, get an education, get a good job. So I got out my acrylic paint brushes and I painted my creche, but when I went back to the second glance, they had, "And the lion shall lie down with the lamb, the wonder of peace." It's a regal edition. And Edna says, "May our powers of wonder and imagination be magnified during this magical time of year." I thought, wow. And it's such a beautiful image. It's the same colors as my scarf. And I thought, oh, how cool is that? And so I went back, because I kind of haunt the second glance. Because I can't send $20 or $30 or $50 to an entire recycle bin of begging letters. I can't do it. I'm retired on fixed income, and I can't do it. But I have enough that I can go to the second glance and buy lovely little things that I use as props on this show, and the money goes to the food pantry. I had to pick a charity. I got my wonderful carousel horse there, and I got my angel there. And yeah, they were in tough shape. They needed a paint job. But I recycle. I reuse. I try to be eco-friendly. So when I went, there was this beautiful mother and child. This one is Molly and Annie. And this one is Kathleen and Child. It's a gorgeous one. It was done in 1981, which I liked it. There were several. I picked one. That's the year that I got married. So I have like this memento. And this one is Christina and Child, and it was done in 1975. 1975 is the year that I took my registration exam and became an occupational therapist, where I could make 3 times the amount of money that I could as a clerk in a drugstore at the Pennsauken Mart. And when I did the lace show, I showed you these guys. These are Lovers of the Summer Palace. You know, sometimes when you put out to the universe that you're doing something, the universe comes through for you. So the other day, I found this. It says, "What a unique and joyful experience to live to see an entire museum dedicated to my work. I deeply appreciate and am humbly grateful for this great honor." And it's signed Edna Hibble. And it's dated January 1977. Well, Kevin and I, when we went to Florida, visited the Edna Hibble Museum, and I got a book, The Paintings of Edna Hibble, and there's a beautiful Breton woman in here, and there's a quote, couple quotes actually. This one is, "I am so grateful for all the time I've spent learning the techniques of the masters. I can almost look into their minds." She's talking about lithography. Edna painted on stone. She did lithographs. You carve into the stone and etch into the stone and paint the stone and then put the paper on and smooth over the top and pull prints. Elizabeth Hardy taught us how to do that with jelly prints. Instead of a stone, you use a slab of gelatin and you use a brayer and you paint onto them. It's fun. I'm looking forward to wherever she finds her new venue. Victor and I are going to take another class with her when she gets herself set up. So this is another quote from Edna. "Painting is not done by a brush or by a hand. It is done with the head. It is a way of thinking. This is true of all art forms. There is plenty of talent around, but talent produces only surface effects. I've been listening to this talking book by Kate Morton called The Clockmaker's Daughter. I had to listen to it a couple of times. When I was learning to write, they said, don't use a shifting point of view. Kate Morton does, and now I know why they tell you not to do that. There's a ghost, and there's a narrator, and then there's the sister of the artist, and the ghost speaks from life first and then as a ghost. It's kind of, so I had to listen to it a couple of times. It's like either I'm going senile or it was a little hard to follow, but the narration is gorgeous. It's on Audible, The Clockmaker's Daughter. Anyway, so Kevin got me this book because in the book there was a portrait she did of a fisherwoman of Nazaire that he thought looked like me. And I looked at it and I thought, really? Because the woman's quite attractive. And I thought, wow, that's kind of cool. And I was thinking along those lines, and I said, would it be a bad thing if I got 2 books? And he's like, oh, get 2 books. And there's a portrait in this little book. The World I Love is the name of the book, but it says Seminole Princess. And it's striking because the little girl looks like photos of me at that age. And I was like, no, that's what I look like. Right down to like the fine dark brown hair. Little pug nose, dark eyes. I thought, yeah, that looks like me. So I have 2 more things to tell you. One is Kevin took me to Asian Inspiration Gallery during the Rockport Makers Festival and bought me a new singing bowl from India. And what's fun about it is, remember I showed you that gorgeous Tara that I found, the green Tara? The green Tara was a famous Buddhist king's wife. He had 2 wives, white Tara from China and the green Tara from Nepal. And this beautiful singing bowl has a green Tara in it. My poor husband, he's got Christmas presents and Buddhist presents to buy because I'm sort of a mix. And the last thing I'm going to tell you is I have an older book by Jill Barklam, The Secret Staircase. And it's all about these little mice. And the mice have like a Christmassy kind of a thing going on. And they have all this feasting. And they have this play that they do. And the little mice dress in costume. And some of them juggle. And some tell ghost stories and stuff. Well, my dishwasher died. I said to my husband, Kevin, I think it's mice because my little papillons have their nose in the holes on either side of the cabinetry trying to sniff what's going on with that dishwasher. Either it's leaking something skunky or there's a mouse back there. Well, the repairman came this morning. Mice chewed the wiring harness. Interesting. Christmas mice in my house. And the trick's going to be, how do I get them out and put them in the woods without hurting them? Because I really don't want them to live in my house and eat my wiring and maybe cause a house fire. That's all for now. We gotta go. My clock ran out. Be safe. Be well. If you're sad, the Congo in Rockport is having a blue Christmas service this Thursday. Or come out for Christmas Eve. Get to hear me and Kevin sing. Give love this Christmas, if you can.